What's up, Water Cooler? I'm Tristan Linville. You are here for episode 32 of the Water Cooler Talks on Manufacturing and Technology. My co-host, Michael Callahan. We haven't been here in a while, but we're here.
Yeah, tell us why we haven't been here in a while, Tristan. What happened?
Well, life has been busy. I mean, you've been busy. It's probably your fault.
It's
But
actually someone had a major life event that could allow you to change some insurance selections. What was that life event?
there was a child in there.
Wow.
So he's what, almost 10 months now. So yeah, the last 3, 4, 5 months have been really dedicated to diapers
Sleep.
and being dad. Also changed in there. I changed jobs a little bit. I now focus on the automotive and my passion, the aerospace and defense industry when it comes to manufacturers.
That's the definition of life change right there. Change jobs and added one to the kid column.
Yeah. But so it's been good, but we're happy. We're getting, the water cooler talks back up to speed. We're gonna have some great guests lined up. We do have one today, but if you don't mind, I do have a joke to start
I
us
would
off.
like to know what joke you would tell your 9-month-old child.
My 9-month-old child, he would probably not understand it. But you may not understand this either. But why don't scientists trust atoms?
I don't know.
Because they make up everything.
It's
pretty scientific, pretty nerdy.
Hold on. What do you call a happy cowboy? Because I feel like we need a little cheer here.
Ooh, my mind went gaucho, but I don't.
A Jolly Rancher, don't worry.
A Jolly Rancher. Well, speaking of Jolly, we have a great guest to bring on today. Good friend of ours. And are you ready?
I'm ready, but I don't know who it is.
Oh,
surprise me.
Surprise! We got Ingemar Venkis, ladies and gentlemen. Ingemar, how's it going?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for the invitation. I don't know that I have a first joke as good as Jolly Rancher. Holy cow, where did you pull that?
Jolly Rancher was solid. That definitely elevated the mood. So Ingemar Venkis from BDO. So BDO, massive tax audit insurance firm globally. But we're here focusing on manufacturing and technology. So Ingemar, take us through how BDO and how that relates to manufacturing and technology.
Sure. In the structure of the firm, you just called out fifth largest audit, tax, and assurance company in the world. We do have an advisory practice. Management consulting is a segment of that. And then inside that, we have practices that focus on a variety of subject matter requirements, industry needs. I happen to work in a group called Technology and Transformation, and we specialize in digital transformations, specifically in manufacturing. And yes, I have a background from a manufacturing history. And so what we do is we help clients figure out how to go from an existing old system, maybe no system, and how to migrate to a cloud front end focused, AI enabled, data architected for today's modern generation of needs from data. And that's what we do. And so we have a variety of methods that we engage with clients to understand where they at today, what are the outcomes and benefits they're looking to drive, and then we put a roadmap together to help them get there. And that roadmap consists of not just process, but outcomes that the C-suite wants, and then what technology or data applications, business applications, all need to be part of that solution matrix, and then help them execute across a timeline.
Yeah,
that's what we do.
So, Ingemar, your background is heavy in implementations, architecture, Michigan, all things Michigan, right? That you're still in Michigan, right?
Yeah. Hey, national champs, basketball this year.
Yeah, they played well. I totally agree. They were money actually.
Maybe instead of the changing dynamic of software, we should talk about the changing dynamic of college sports.
Oh, that would
Just kidding.
be
It's
it.
not
That's 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4, 5. I'll take that player. I'll take that. Yeah, I know.
That's the way it's going.
Exactly.
But
Mhm.
talk about your background and like how you got here into your current chair today,
Sure.
things you're passionate about, related to some of these digital transformations and why you are.
Sure. So, my prior lives, I've had a couple. In the late 90s, I worked for a consulting firm based in Chicago, helped grow that from about 25 million to over $1 billion. I became a managing partner for them for several years. And then in 2004, I got this interesting itch to go to work for a software company that was a fledgling software company. It was about 80 million when I talked to them. It was owned by a company called Golden Gate Capital. And I met several people that worked for Golden Gate, and eventually went to work there in April of 2004. And then in 2004, I decided to move on to BDO. That software company, by the way, is today known as Infor.
Nice.
When I went for that, it wasn't that name, and I worked in development and services as well as in sales, leading transformational efforts. And then in 24, I came over, or 25, I came over to BDO to help them in the digital transformation space where I am today.
I love it. I love it. And, within that transformation space, there's a very strong practice with BDO in working with companies that are working with the government, whether that is government contractors. So whether that's a services contractor, a manufacturer, obviously we're focused on this podcast a little bit more about the manufacturers, but kind of take us through the landscape of government contracting as of late and what that means for digital transformation and why it's such a hot topic today.
Sure. So you brought up a very good point. Government contracting is, by definition, really is that depending on what department you have to work within, public, state, federal, and then within federal, Department of Defense or another federal agency, they have requirements. And those requirements span technology, cybersecurity, process, and they govern those entities in those industries. And that's the basics of what I'm talking about from a government contracting point of view. When you talk manufacturing, obviously you've heard of aerospace and defense, right? Aerospace is almost its own segment, can be commercial, can do both, can be hybrid. They can do defense contracts and commercial contracts. And then when you get into defense, very similar. They can make ammunition, they can make vehicles, they can do a lot of different things, discrete manufacturing wise, and therefore have government contract requirements with the Department of Defense. Then you have engineering and construction industry that build things for the government. Could be buildings, could be power centers, water, reclamation, power generation. So there's a lot of engineering and construction requirements that again fall back to the auspices of a government contract. And so public sector is another one, like federal government, working for agencies in a state government. State does follow federal. Same for a local government. So, that has a requirement way different than manufacturing. But again, the idea being to win a contract, you have a bid. You have to comply to those requirements. Once you get the contract, you have to have proof that you're following the contract because it's auditable based on whatever organization of the government size and scale has an audit capability. You have to meet that audit requirement. So that's sort of the landscape that you see. Now, let's talk manufacturing and specifically in defense as an example. So we'll call it A&D. Government contracts, probably the number one most important thing is you got to win a bid. So the government will put out a bid for something. Let's just say they need a vehicle that does something unique, launch a drone. So something like that, right? So they'll put a spec out And then there's companies that have the ability to produce a vehicle and they have engineer to order capability, meaning they can design something specific to a vehicle. So in a traditional vehicle, think of a car you drive or a truck you drive. You like certain interiors, you like certain exteriors, types of wheels, size of motor, and you'll fall in love with it and you buy it. Was that engineer to order? Make to order, maybe, but probably all stock available in a platform, and you just picked what you wanted and went to the local dealer and bought it. So it's significantly different when you're talking about we need something that can survive in this atmospheric conditions, the desert, cold, whatever, and then on down. It has to do this and this fast. It has to be able to be supported on these vehicles. It needs to be able to be maintained, and we need access to labor to install it, to repair it. And that becomes sort of the thing that they live within to win that contract. All right. So engineers get engaged. They agree on a design. There's specific specifications that are created. There's work instructions on how it should be made. And then there's the bid on the actual price, the life of the contract. And then there's the warranty and maintenance of it, so on and so forth. And so the companies have to go through that process. And if they win, they have to set up the contract, right? And then in the day in the life today, setting up and winning a contract now falls under something called CMMC 2.0. But basically that's the government realizing that they're wanting to work faster and easier with different types of companies than what they traditionally have when you think of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 supply base. And when you have the rationalization of the supply base, starting with something as simple as you have to be an American-based company in order to win a contract. Well, CMMC creates these compliance requirements to be met in order to win the bid. And that's coming now. In 2026, in November, you have to be able to prove that you are meeting those requirements. And so that's sort of the pressures that a company that wants to do business with the Department of Defense, they have to live with today. So once you follow through that process and be able to win the bid, then you have to produce it, and that requires the contract tracking, right? When in simple terms, in tech, not so much technology, but in process, you have a contract, you have contract lines, and then you have associated order maturization happen, manufacturing order, right? It begins, it gets sourced, it gets produced at different work centers. There are tests that are run, it goes to finish, and then gets sent out. And as that part of that process is going on, you've got things that are happening to make sure it's compliant, like tracking the costs to meet certain requirements of what are referred to as DFAR that the Department of Defense requires. And that's just to show that you're in good faith, not ripping off the government, that you're showing what your costs are in association to what you're producing. Same for labor. So when you think of a contract, yes, I made vehicles, but now I have a labor force that's going to go out, install, train, support, fix, warranty those items. So you have to also track labor associated and how you recognize revenue. And that's all also covered under some of the requirements for DFAR. So as that makes sense to you guys, that's sort of the day in the life of what these manufacturers that are winning a contract and then having to work with the government go through. If that makes sense.
It makes sense to me. Michael, what's your thoughts? I know you've always got fun questions.
It's a big topic, and I think one of the things I'm curious from a BDO standpoint. Wow, my hand just real numb real fast. That was fun. Funny bone, don't hit it. But from a BDO process, when someone comes to you and says, "Hey, we're unsure if we need this or what we should do from a technology roadmap," like what's y'all's process for helping them? I think it's helpful for the audience to hear, like, hey, I'm in this immature status and I don't really know what to do next. So can you kind of walk them through what that would look like working with someone like BDO?
Yeah, we start out with a phone call, face-to-face. We call it discovery. And we bring in the subject matter experts. We have a compliance practice that comes in along with cybersecurity potentially, and digital transformation experts, somebody like myself who understands manufacturing, that we can walk through the different work streams, let the customer explain to us what they do, how do they do it, And then the compliance people start asking smart questions like, oh, where do you make this thing that you want to sell to the government? It sits over there. And is it cordoned off? No. And well, how do you know that that person is an American citizen if he's over there working on it? What's your system over there? So we follow that discovery, right? We're looking for evidence. We're saying, show us your process documentation. We're out on the floor. We're talking to the people that are actually doing the work. And then we're talking to finance and accounting to understand how they're accounting for that, and contract people. So we follow a very rigorous process. When a customer says, do I have to do this? What do I have to do? Help me understand. Now, what the second layer, so, it can start out very simple where you take all the work streams in a company, then you start educating them to, these are areas where compliance happens and you need to be aware of it. So think of sales and quoting, right?
Yep.
Those are two work streams. You got quote to order, and then you got order to build. They cross groups, cross work streams. So I was in a conversation a couple of weeks ago we were doing this discovery about, hey, you got to be concerned about DFARS and how do you track the cost on this contract, and how the size of the revenue that you're going to get will cause this requirement for to come into play. And I was surprised at how they didn't understand how what they do in estimating and quoting affects the ordering process. And so getting the two together just to help them educate, they didn't even realize the requirement. But once you get together and you start to understand the requirement, then you start asking questions like Tristan, you said before, well, they just take it on site, do it on-prem and lock everything down. And there's some truth to that, but CMMC today is a requirement they have to meet, right? So it has to be documented. And there's systems out there. Infor provides one that gives you out-of-the-box capability in order to meet these compliance requirements. It doesn't mean that you can hire a 3PAO to come in and do the independent audit of your firm, and you're going to pass it. But BDO will come in and tell you, here's where your gaps are. And then BDO can help you identify those gaps and put a program together that gets you there with recommendation. So actionable recommendations to get these companies to move. But you're absolutely right. I would say 9 out of 10 of the discussions we're having today, they understand there's a requirement. They don't really understand how it impacts their individual work process or work stream. And they don't understand whether or not they have to do something about it. And then at different parts of the organization, they're worried about it. Like, I think the second largest one that I ask questions to you guys, how often are you running into hybrid model where the customer does commercial and they do percent of business with the government? Because that creates a whole nother layer of interesting, as I was saying before, in my example about a cordoned off area to do military work that is separate from your commercial work. Or do you create your business structure to say, I'm going to have a company that sells to the government and I'm going to have a company that builds for commercial? And and the structure and how you set that up inside a ERP application allows for the hybrid or coexistence of those from a financial reporting point of view. It's kind of an interesting thing. But Michael, we come in and we have to understand that, and then we make recommendations to implementing software and business process optimization to make sure they're documenting and can meet an audit and pass an audit if that happens on the government side of things.
Yeah. So there's a few big things that you kind of spoke to there. One was the November date, right? November of this year under CMMC 2.0, there will have to be a C3PAO, which is a third-party auditor, come in, look at under the covers, look at your business system, and sign off. It's no longer a self-attestation in order to win these government contracts. So that's a big thing. And then, when you're talking all these work streams, it's very related to your back-end business systems. Everything from your ERP to your warehouse management, everything that helps you run your business. And kind of where I wanted to drive this is these businesses have a couple choices. And you alluded to it. They can either stay with their legacy on-prem business systems, or they can make the choice to go to the cloud, aka a gov cloud. So there's a couple options out there, but I want you to kind of help our audiences of like, what is the difference between the gov cloud in a regular commercial cloud, and then why it actually is a little bit smarter to future-proof their organization down the road to take the leap to a GovCloud solution for those that are pursuing government contracts.
Sure. So most of the cloud providers today realize that there's a government requirement, there's a data residency requirement by country. A lot of that now is out there, as well as the commercial requirement. And some are more mature than others. And all I mean by maturity is how many farms or locations, data centers they've built to process the transactions for the different companies. So that's a public cloud, right? There's a lot of software companies also support on their own single clouds or private clouds, right? SAP does, for example. I think Oracle probably does as well. And they can have a level of a government cloud feel to that in a single cloud, single instance. But what I'm talking about is a multi-instance public cloud, right? So when you think of that, think of other residents in the same data center on the same sets of servers running applications, have their own data, but running a type of application. And so when you think of it that way at a government level, it has a lot more controls that have to be applied in order to track and prove the transactions are secure for a lot of different reasons, right? And that's where the complexity becomes. Those controls help support ITAR and whether or not you're legal to have access to the data, run the processes, et cetera, right? And CMMC can be infused in there. It's an additional, I think, I could be wrong, so don't quote me, but I think it's an additional 40 or so controls on top of the normal GovCloud controls to give you the covering that you need. And then, when you talk about cybersecurity, it's highly secure with a special set of application controls to ensure access. And you can only use those tools. So it limits your abilities in the sense that you can't just pick and choose different applications because they all have to work together and they have to meet that GovCloud requirement, whether it's on a Microsoft Azure GovCloud or an AWS GovCloud. Those have requirements and they go through attestation and requirements and administration by the government to say, yes, they meet those requirements. And then it's up to the softwares, the companies that apply that software to make sure their products are GovCloud ready, because then a customer knows if I buy that product and I use it the way they tell me to, I will meet the GovCloud requirement. Now, security, local administration still has to enforce role-based security, make sure the right people are accessing the system. And the system has to say, hey, check the box here and we'll make sure we know they have a passport and they're a U.S. citizen. They're okay, take care of ITAR. FedRAMP is another one, onboarding, offboarding, all that kind of happens. Then the complexity kind of gets into, well, if the applications are different, how can I make them work together? So if you think you buy something like a Salesforce or a Microsoft, CRM type tool or an e-commerce engine, you want to tie it to an ERP system. Well, there's a process that's defined for that, right? Endpoints have to be defined and only standard application logic can be exercised. So it's very restrictive, right? Versus a commercial cloud, which has controls, a lot fewer, but they're still strong. CMMC can be enforced in a commercial cloud if you want at a level 2. So, it's just a little more open and it's a little bit easier. And there's more companies in the commercial cloud than in the GovCloud for obvious reasons, right? Their applications don't have a need, or there's a maturization. It can take up to a couple of years by the time you define your product roadmap, build it, go through the attestation and approve, and then have the administrator approve it to get you actually into the GovCloud. So I think that's the main thing that companies have to look at is, do I have a full requirement to be in the GovCloud? And if the answer is yes, then you have choices to choose from. And then once I'm in the GovCloud, what applications do I need from a business architecture perspective? And then make those decisions. And then leverage an enterprise architecture to make sure those things all can actually work together and meet the requirements.
Something I've heard recently, and this is probably a question for both of you, is so there's FedRAMP authorized vendors, right? So vendor goes through the process, they get authorized on the FedRAMP, all that stuff. But then there's also vendors that maybe don't go that route and they go have a third party certification. So they have a company that manages that piece. What are the drawbacks to doing something like that? Or are there?
One is what's real and what the government says is real. And then there's the interpretation of what they think, a company thinks they can leverage. I would say personally, this is just my opinion. It's better to be safe and go highly as restrictive as you can when you deal with the federal government and the Department of Defense, because they're going to make sure that the compliance requirements are met by the software company. And as a customer, that's a lot of work that I don't have to worry about. If you have to try to track those things to a third party, you're exposing yourself to process gaps that you don't have properly documented. You could be exposing yourself to how does the software stay maintained that you don't know. So there's pros and cons to each, and I can see where that goes. But I'm just saying, take the heavy route and just say who's got the strongest and most tightest compliance met, and you're going to be the safest there.
Yeah. And to kind of help viewers, because even people in this industry sometimes don't know, but you can go out to the FedRAMP marketplace. So just Google FedRAMP marketplace and then type in a solution provider, because what Ingemar is describing here is not just the cloud having a secure box around it, but it's also the application layer inside of that cloud having a secure box around it. And that's what really helps tighten these controls and secures these organizations whose core competency is building these weapon systems or building these, specialized vehicles. It's not necessarily being the most secure IT experts in the world, right? So if you rely on the trusted, not just trusted, approved vendors from the federal government, that's what you're finding on the FedRAMP marketplace, to where you get those approved applications in the approved clouds. And I agree with Ingemar, taking that highest level of scrutiny, especially as we start to transition into the world of AI, where data becomes an asset. And it'd be naive to think that these defense contractors, defense manufacturers are not thinking about how they use AI within their business system. However, where's that data going? What solutions, AI solutions, have been approved? And so that was kind of my next question for you, Ingemar, as my dog over here decides to howl. Very excited about AI, apparently.
Buzzword.
Is how is AI playing into the landscape, for these defense contractors, not just in their weapon systems, but also in their back end business systems, so that they can achieve the same efficiencies that really the Department of War is calling on a lot of these companies to really ramp up at a crazy fast pace. AI is helping with supply chain resiliency, but what are you seeing of these companies adopting AI?
Yeah, I mean, one is the compliance requirements on AI and to what extent the data and the LMLs will be allowed to exercise and use is still under a lot of scrutiny. So, it's the clear definition of where it's going to go is still under scrutiny by both the government and the suppliers. I will tell you that, when you talk about transactional data within a process, there's a lot of things that you can do that, quote, AI can provide access to information. But, what I'm talking about is the data coordinating is going to be critical, because CUI cannot get into that, period, end of subject, because that's a heavy requirement. So then you look at use cases like, well, let's talk shop floor and engineering change orders, for example, because that's a heavy requirement if you think about doing contracts with the government where you're making something that has to be specialized and then you have to actually construct it and do it quickly, right? It's all about speed now and accuracy. AI is perfect for that. You just have to make sure you choose the right tools that are approved. And so as they come out, you make the choice on what that is. Some vendors, Infor being one of them, has that use case for that industry, for that requirement that's available, that's pre-vetted with their application. So you get benefit out of this. Not just, the talk of the last year was predictive maintenance. Well, that's important, and that's a good one. Predictive analytics was the one prior, right? 6 months before that, everyone was talking about AI is going to read everything and then tell you what to do next. I'm talking about is interpreting change within like an engineering order, and then being able to say, well, these are the spec that changing, the tooling that needs to change, generate new work instructions, so that the next day I can literally be making that revision on the shop floor. That's it. That is a perfect example of how generative AI inside a defense manufacturer will help get stuff done faster, right? Because think about it, especially with today, what's going on. You got a war out there. You got things that are learning on the battlefield. They're coming back and they need to make changes to munitions. And they don't have time to wait for a year for them to come up with the new product that meets all those things. And, you can read about this on any of the breaking defense news. I mean, it's a struggle just in the government state. Well, this is how we used to do things, and we need to be more nimble and fast. So when something does come in and they need a revision, AI is a perfect tool inside that application to be able to see it and be able to make judgments and then learn. So if I make that use case change to a product, an engineering change, tactically Infor's ERP system can take care of that. Well, tactically, the PAS system that Infor provides, Velocity, can allow for an interaction in an MES application to say, here's the updated work instructions, and not have somebody have to go write all those things because engineers are off working on the next thing. It can interpret those changes. So I'm trying to give you a real world example of a use case of AI that really doesn't touch CUI stuff or shouldn't be touching CUI data. It's dealing with changes that are occurring in the manufacturing of an item on the day in the shop floor. And those are real. And there's a lot of those use cases. And, Infor has a list of what they're building for out of the box, plus the ability to bring in specialists. And in 30, 40 days, you can be able to turn on simple use cases that can help interact transactions and make them run better. That's just one example. But I'm just saying that's where AI is going, in my mind, in manufacturing. Is that generative agentic capability around the workflows or the interdependencies of the work streams to be able to, if I make a change here, I can interpret it and impact it in another work stream, and I don't have to deal with it. When you think of accounting and three-way match, for example, everybody is talking for years, how can I model that and then make it automated? Well, that quickly moved from, what it was termed into AI. Whether or not it is true AI or not, it doesn't matter. It is matching invoices to receipts to say, go ahead and pay. And that's a good thing, right? But I think that's one that everybody can get their head around. And I'm just saying, if you look at everything that goes on today in manufacturing, there are lots of little cases that AI is perfect for, and it helps people. Because think of an engineer who's worried about making that change on that drone launching vehicle because they need it now. They don't need to wait a year. They need it now. Well, just to start making it, if I can generate seeing that change and the details, I can update the specification requirements to run on that work center and write the new work instruction and make it available right away. That's a perfect use case. And there are tools out there, whether it's from the Infor or other companies, that the companies are buying in a hybrid, IT application environment. Copilot, for example, from Microsoft can do some of that too. So they can coexist. They just have to make sure that whatever the government says is the approved AI tooling, then that's what they need to use.
Yep, agreed. Well,
Pretty
cool.
Good. I remember one of our early episodes. We had an individual on from the government actually, and one of the things he talked about from an AI strategy was undifferentiated heavy lifting, and it's always stuck with me because we're starting to see all of those processes, call it AP automation. Now you're hearing about AR, accounts receivable automation, You've got order to cash, right? Automating, taking a PDF and putting it in as an order. You're seeing all of these because those are really, they're just manual tasks that you don't have to have a differentiated individual. And I think there's so many
Zero
of those.
value.
Yeah, exactly. Let them spend more time on the phone with a customer or chasing down someone that hasn't paid versus
the exceptions.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Or you
Agreed.
just, you train on something new,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
absolutely.
the talent can do different things, and with doing mundane, everyday tasks that should be automated, right?
If only
Yeah,
could
It
make
just
me a
doesn't
better
make
golfer.
sense. So,
Be great.
well, that's the next thing after AI would be robotics and AI in there. Maybe your swing plane will get into a robot, Michael, and
For sure.
it'll tell
Yeah.
you how to exactly fix it, and then it'll come and agitate your body muscles to help you swing.
I'll wear long sleeves. I'll just hook myself up. We'll all of a sudden be a scratch golfer. It'll be great.
Little exoskeleton scratch
They make a
golfer.
device. They actually make a device that collects data that's in the golf club these days, and you
Saw
can
that.
buy it. Of course, you buy it, and then you swing with it, and then you go to the app, and it tells you what you're doing, and all kinds of stuff. I don't know. I don't know about applying that kind of technology to my swing, anyways. But
I just need
it can help me put the ball in the hole with less strokes. I suppose it'd be a good thing.
Yeah. So we always end these things with a big question. And Ingmar, how many kids do you have?
4.
4. Beautiful.
Kristen's
So
on
the
his way
big,
up to match you, by the way.
yeah, we're trying to get there.
May try to go greater. I don't know.
Problems just get bigger, Tristan. They get more
I know.
expensive and they get bigger. That's it.
I know. So the big question of the day is, if you had to provide some wisdom to a young father or mother, what is it? Give us the lowdown.
Costco. Definitely. Go to Costco.
Yeah.
I like that.
I would say be patient with each other, because like I said, the issues are like, lack of sleep, diapers, teaching kids how to eat is a challenge. Trying to go and do your normal thing, whether that's to a program. You got to have a date night. Man, you just need a break. So have that family or a neighbor, give them a case of beer or whatever you need. Take, even if they're 9 months old, they probably have a 14-year-old that can handle the child, and get out of the house with your wife and remember why you got married and enjoy the things that you do. That would be my number one advice to a young parent couple.
I love it.
Just keep putting money away for stuff that happens, because I can tell you they just get bigger. Like, oh, I need a car. I got to go to I start, a funny thing I'll leave you with is I'm starting to love the celebration of when they come off my payroll.
Ooh,
So my
I like that.
27-year-old daughter, my oldest, just became a PA, physician's assistant.
Oh yeah.
And on
Off
April
payroll.
5th of her 27th birthday, boom, you are no longer on my insurance. You're no longer on anything, and you're all on your own. And she's in fine shape, so there's no issue.
Yeah, she's
but
doing okay.
it was a celebratory moment in my life. It was sad, happy financially, and it was just a moment. So you have that to look forward to, is the day they come off your payroll, because it's not the 18th birthday.
Yeah.
It's not the first birthday. Those are actually fun. Well, they're unique moments. Let's just say that when they come off the payroll, that is when you go, wow.
Yeah. I have my own little celebration coming up. I have in 2 weeks, my daughter is graduating pre-K, which is a $500 bonus to me every month. And
that's a good thing.
I don't know what I'm going to do with that money, but thank you to the public school system, because I'm not paying them.
I think we cheers to it. I think we cheers to you coming on, Ingmar. I appreciate you coming out.
Anytime, dude. Anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk golf too next time. BDO now sponsors the LPGA. We're the largest tax and audit sponsor of the LPGA. And
Sounds
our
like
brand ambassador is Alban Venezuela from Switzerland. She plays on the LPGA. And you guys probably know who the BDO branded ambassador is for the PGA.
Georgia guy, or Florida guy. He's okay.
That's it. So, here's what
Were
it
you guys
is. But
happy with
anyways,
the draft? The NFL draft. That was the big thing that happened this last week, Thursday night, Friday night. Saturday.
I get more happy about my fantasy draft nowadays. I think I give up on the Cowboys at this point.
I read that
So-
most of the draft people that follow the draft gave the Cowboys. I thought it was a B or a B minus.
It wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll mess
I
it
always
up.
find the draft interesting. It's
Yeah,
just
it
fun
is.
to watch because everybody for weeks in the pre-draft and all the positioning and where the players are going to go. And I think most of them turned out, except for the first 3 or 4, that kind of flipped and flopped all over the place. So
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting.
I love it.
Now we
Stuff
just gotta get
that-
we gotta get to August for some football.
Yeah.
That's what we
Right.
gotta get.
Indeed.
Right, for sure.
Indeed.
All right, guys.
Well, cool. We appreciate you, and hope everyone drinks their H2O and enjoyed the show.
It's a rhyme. I like
See
it.
ya.